My first ever Nuzlocke. Well, kinda. Recently, I did do a private soul link for my friend Ben and a rival lock on my Twitch, but this is how it went.
You might actually lose this.
A few moments later.
Rest in peace, Buggy.
Bye bye.
Lazar! Lazar, no!
Have a little chomp, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry.
Terry really put it in reverse.
Oh no!
Oh, Terry!
Oh, you're so useless.
Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Mismatch. May you rest up. Fly haiku.
Yeah, you can see why I'm starting over. However, I didn't just want to start over and do a normal Nuzlocke. No, I wanted to spice things up just a little bit. So, I decided to random every single Pokémon. The starters will be random, the wild Pokémon will be random, and all the trainer battles will be random. Even the legendaries will be swapped for other random legendaries. Groudon could end up being a Manaphy, and good luck trying to ride that thing through lava. It doesn't end there though, as literally every single evolution will be random too, so I had absolutely no clue who I was getting. I did make some small adjustments, just to make things a little better, like setting all the starters to be 3-stage evolutions, and all the wild Pokemon to be obviously similar to those that would normally spawn there. My friend Ben literally got 2 legendaries as options for starters last time, and well, that kind of defeats the purpose of everything, doesn't it? That's all the changes, but for those who don't know, the rules of a Nuzlocke are, I can only catch the first encounters in each new area, I must nickname every Pokemon I catch, and no leveling my Pokemon past the highest level of the next gym leader's strongest Pokemon. I didn't want to make things too hard on my first try, so these are what I started out with. But then I saw everyone else was doing hardcore Nuzlocks and I felt a little left out, so pain it was. Which means, after the first gym, I eventually added the rules that no usable items were allowed in battle like potions, but I could use held items like berries, and I had to change the battle style to set mode. So with that being said, let's see how things went for me this time. Surely only up. Right? Well, I started in the back of the truck as always, which I'm still not sure why I even have to sit there when my dad's already here in another town. Ah, right. So I quickly left on my adventure before my house started to look like a scene out of Rule 34. I went to save the professor, who was losing to a Pokemon who doesn't even live in this route anymore, so I have no idea how— oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. This led me to make my first choice of the run as I was presented with my 3 starter options. I went with the most unoriginal option there, and picked the one Pokemon that was already a starter. I named him Leo and went off on my merry way. After getting my starter, I went to find and battle Entrepreneur Thomas? Yeah, another thing I did was change all the trainer names just for the heck of it. They sent out an Azurill, so they really weren't much of a challenge. I beat them, collected my Pokeballs as a reward, and went out to catch my first wild encounters. As I said earlier, the full hardcore rules of the Nuzlocke didn't start until after the first gym, so I don't want to spend too much time on the stuff that happened before then. After beating May, I went for my first 3 encounters. In Route 101, I ran into a Pichu, which I caught. I named the little guy Bolt after the forgotten Disney doggo, and ran up to Route 103. Here, I encountered a Riolu, which I caught and named Riley after his bestie. I then ran left to Route 102, where I encountered a Wurmple. Not so great, but his extremely low evolution level meant I got to test out the random evolutions very early on, so silver linings. I named it Bugsy in honor of my fallen Soul Link brethren. Rest up, Buggy. So with my first few encounters being successful, I then made my way to Petalburg to speak to my dad, my real dad this time, and then tagged along with Wally to watch him catch a Pokemon that, in this timeline, doesn't live in that route, or whilst using a Pokemon that isn't local either. That instantly disqualified Wally from the run for the use of illegal Pokemon. Be better, Wally. After witnessing Wally cheat right in front of my eyes, I snitched on him to my dad and swiftly left to Route 104 before he could catch me. Here I ran into my next encounter, which was a Helioptile. I caught it and named it Floofty after a character in the genuinely insanely underrated game Bugsnax. Please do yourself a favour and play it. Not enough people talk about this masterpiece. I'm not sponsored, I swear. It was also here I realised I now had 2 Pokemon that evolved through friendship, so I just kinda had to wait for them to be happy. If you're feeling sad, just be happy. Why can't you just like me already? Also, special shout out to this dick, I forgot about him and his full restore, blatantly disregarding the rules of the Nuzlocke. I'll allow it though, as I hadn't changed my potion rule just yet, so no disqualification for him. Naturally, it was then off to Petalburg Woods, where I went for my next encounter, which was a— why are you so happy? I might be a casual player, but I know how you are. You don't have a reason to be so pleased with yourself. Still though, it's cute enough, so I can't be too mad. I caught it and named it Bloom in the hope it would blossom into life later in the run. I then had an annoyingly painful fight against the Metapod using Bugsy, but it was worth it because it was time for my first evolution, which was Why must you haunt me? Thankfully, once again, Metapod had an extremely low evolution level, so we'd have our first final evolution real soon. I then went and fought the first Magma Grunt, or right away in. They literally only had a Cleffer, so I made quick work of them and moved on. Don't quit your day job, buddy. It was then further up to the north of Route 104, and okay, I have an admission. The casual player in me thought, ooh, new area, so new encounter, right? Wrong. It's still technically Route 104, so sorry in advance, but I may have caught a Pokemon I wasn't allowed to here, but trust me, it really didn't matter. You will see. Regardless, I caught the Paras and named it Lucy. And that was it for this route, except it wasn't, because why did 2 trainers use full restores this early? Wow, everyone in this region was trying to abuse the rules. But again, no potion rule change yet, so technically, it's legal. I did this to myself. Okay, now that actually is all for Route 104, as I then finally reached Rustboro City, but not before one more encounter. I took a detour to Route 116, where I found a... yeah, maybe I shouldn't have come here. I gave it a generic male name like Frank, sorry to any Franks out there, and just dumped it in the PC. On to the first gym. I went to fight the gym leader, but before I got that far, it was finally time for Bugsy to reach peak form, evolving into a... needless to say, I was much happier with this one. Ferret, my beloved. Now it was actually time to fight Pre-Scholar Forest, and wait, what? As you would expect, I hadn't changed my potion rule yet, so the battle was a whitewash. I'll quickly gloss over it though. She started off with a Vanillite, so I switched into Riley, who actually nearly got KO'd on the next turn. Luckily, he was holding an Aurum Berry to heal it back up. Consistent uproars were causing enough damage to have probably legitimately KO'd Riley if it wasn't for me using potions. But I was, so many turns of potion spamming later, and Riley finally KO'd Vanillite with a quick attack. Her second Pokemon was an Elekid, so I switched back to Leo. 3 Vine Whips later, and the job was done. Our first gym badge. As you can tell, it was way too easy the way it was, and I knew something had to change. It would be both boring to watch and play. So, from here on out, we were under hardcore rules now. The real challenge had just started. Upon beating the gym, it was time to go back to Route 116 to beat up more of those damn pesky writers. I chased a Magma Grunt into Rust Earth Tunnel, which meant another encounter. I found a Rattata, which was something I could actually evolve through level up, so I'll take it. I caught it and named it Violet. I then challenged Writer Christiana, who only had a Silcoon, which meant 10 years of hardened spamming later, and it was finally over. That led me back to the Devon Court, where I got the letter for Stephen, and then further back to Bryony's place to set sail for Dewford. Instantly after arriving in Dewford, I spoke to this fisherman here to receive the old rod to fish for my next encounter, which was a Shelder, that I caught and named Shelly. A nice type to have for variety, but I also now had 2 different Pokemon who evolved through friendship, and another 3 who evolved through stones. With the items being random, these guys were kind of a lost cause for the late game, because where would I find the stones? And I was going to be stuck with the other 2 for a while, in their weak baby forms. Straight after that, I then ran to Granite Cave for the next encounter, which was a Whismur. I caught it and named it Gramble, because it's small and pink and huggable, and I will never stop shielding this game. It was then time for my second gym challenge, and everything was going smoothly until the Litwick incident happened. So, the team I had on hand for the fight was already glaringly weak to fire, which was one problem, but the strongest Pokemon I had was a Ferret, which still had the moveset of a Wurmple, so it wasn't looking good. The only Pokemon I had with good moves against the Litwick was Violet, but she was not ready for battle. So I instantly switched Leo out for Ferret in a panic of not wanting to lose Leo and knowing the others stood no chance. The Litwick instantly made this panic decision worse by using a move that had never caused me this much trouble before. After switching to Bugsy, Litwick used Fire Spin, which trapped him in there and made me face the consequences of that decision. Whilst Bugsy was doing barely any damage of Poison Sting, Litwick minimized, which would end up being annoying later on. At this point, I knew it was doomed, so I just hardened spammed whilst accepting Bugsy's fate. That was until... on the last turn of Fire Spin, Litwick used Smog. On 1 HP, Bugsy had survived. I instantly swapped him out for the only other Pokemon that didn't have an awkward type matchup against it. And well, if a fully evolved Ferret stood no chance, what was poor baby Bolt supposed to do? After getting 1 Thundershock off, Bolt missed the next attack thanks to the earlier minimize, as Litwick proceeded to use another that same turn. That was real nice because that meant Bolt missed again, and after yet another Pokemon surviving on 1 HP, Fire Spin was still around this time and finished it off. Bolt was gone, our first loss of the run. At this point, I was really paranoid at the run ending early, so hoping for something, anything, I sent out Violet in the hope that a Pursuit or a Bite would do good damage and maybe even take it out. But thanks to those 2 minimizes, Violet missed, and another Fire Spin sadly meant Violet joined her friend in the afterlife. After losing my best bets, I just thought screw it and my casual player instincts kicked in. When in doubt, throw the starter out. So knowing it was a horrible matchup, but thinking he stood the best chance out of the remaining Pokemon I had left, I sent out Leo. But going 3 for 3, Leo missed a Vine Whip and was trapped in a Fire Spin. And because Game Freak decided I was not allowed to play the game today, Leo missed 2 more Vine Whips in a row, making it 5 turns of missed attacks. He wouldn't get the chance to make it 6, as sadly, Leo was another victim to Fire Spin. My beloved starter was now gone. 3 Pokemon down, and I'd honestly accepted the run was over. I was going to lose to a random trainer who wasn't even the gym leader. I sent out Bloom, who was the only real choice I had left, but just like the prophecy foretold, it happened. Somehow with an accuracy of 55 and 2 minimizes later, Bloom landed a Grass Whistle to put Litwick to sleep. This meant Bloom could get off a growth and then plant a Leech Seed for some sustain, but this time at the expense of a Confuse Ray. Luckily Bloom didn't hit herself, but did miss with a Grass Whistle and took half her health and damage from a Fire Spin. Looks like it was the same old story yet again. However, miraculously, Bloom fought through the confusion yet again to somehow hit another Grass Whistle. Thankfully the Leech Seed was healing the exact amount of damage equal to the Fire Spin, effectively removing the extra damage. Seemingly everything was too good to be true though, as Bloom would then hit herself in confusion and leave herself one hit away from defeat. I managed to get in one more growth instead of just attacking because I stupidly thought it would make Leech Seed do more damage. It didn't. However, Litwick remained asleep this whole time, and one absorb later, Bloom had done it. She'd pulled off a miracle. There was still one Pokemon left for her, but after a Grass Whistle, Leech Seed and 2 absorbs, the Yamask was no match for Bloom. I slandered Bloom earlier, but honestly, she's the MVP so far. She arrived and saved the day with a smile on her face. My hero. After that weirdly eventful battle, I went and laid to rest my fallen comrades. Rest in peace, Leo, Bolt, and Violet. It was time for revenge, so I restocked my team of Riley, Floofty, and Gramble and went to take on Preschooler Sonia. Apparently this is a trend. A believable one though, as just like with Roxanne, it was hardly much of a challenge. His first Pokemon was a Finian, which Bloom dealt with easily. Then was a Makuhita, which Bugsy and Gramble swiftly took out. I thought it was kinda cute how Brawly's ace was still a Makuhita, even after being random. You just can't keep those two apart. Wanting to quickly leave this cursed town, I ran back to the cave to speak to Steven, handed him the letter, and swiftly left for New Land. I ran back to Petalburg to restock some Pokeballs ready for the next area and sailed away to the beach of Route 109. I fished for the next encounter, which was a Wooper. I caught it, named it Nami, and went on to fight through the rest of the beach. Usually pretty uneventful, right? Yeah, until this happened. Somehow a completely random trainer on the beach took out Gramble, so that meant I was another Pokemon down. And for what? After this shocking loss, I laid Gramble to rest and went to do some off-screen mining in Granite Cave to level up my new team after the losses. I returned back to Route 109 a new man, cleared the place out, and entered Slateport. Upon entering Slateport, I spoke to the guy behind the desk in this place and ran over to the museum to give the Devon parts to Captain Stern. I ran into 2 more of those writers at Team Magma and quickly beat the both of them. Maxie gave me a speech, I see where the others get their passion for writing now, and we all left in one piece. A job well done. Just before exiting the city, I was forced to watch Lycia try and drag me into doing a contest, but I just simply walked away because I don't give in to peer pressure. It was then straight ahead to Route 110, where I instantly went into my next encounter. It was an Incada, yet another bug type. This sucked because battles were getting harder, but nonetheless I caught it, named it Tyler, and sent it to the PC. I then snuck in on a writer's protest and made my way through the route, trying to avoid as many trainers as possible because my Pokemon was starting to get scarily close to the level cap. There were 2 battles I couldn't avoid though, the first being this lady here. One annoying battle later, and to my surprise, it was time for Riley to evolve into a... Yeah, Riley evolved into a Greninja, and I couldn't have been happier. Riley glowed up big time. After this, I then went into the next unavoidable battle, which was against our old friend Thomas. They started with a Diglett this time, which Bugsy took out in one hit thanks to a crit. They then sent out Eradicate, which the new and improved Riley pretty easily dealt with, and then finally sent out a Jigglypuff. Either Thomas had fully ditched their starter, or the Azurill we once saw had evolved into one of these. Either way, it meant fighting new Pokemon every single time, which was just great. Riley dealt with Jigglypuff, and we left for Morville. When I first arrived here, I was excited to get to see the freshly rebuilt Morville City. When I left here, I was a changed man. Before doing anything, I went ahead and did the most important thing. This is a public service announcement. F this guy, and f them too. After letting out my anger on national television, I went to fight at the gym, where I was instantly challenged by our other friend Crystal. He for some reason had a Tyrogue now, so maybe they do swap their Pokemon every fight. Either way, Bugsy eat him very easily. I then wasted no time and ran right in to challenge the gym. The battles are definitely getting harder, but it's nothing my team couldn't deal with. And then this here? This is where it all went wrong. So wrong. He started out with a Pumpkaboo. Annoying for type matchup reasons, but nothing that seemed too hard. I switched out Bugsy to Floofty in the hope that this was the most damage I could do. Then this happened. And let me tell you, I was not a lucky man that day. Floofty hit himself in the first round of confusion. Annoying, but whatever. Floofty then went ahead and hit himself again. Then he snapped out and got one Thundershock off, but what's that? More confusion. And because Floofty lacks some kind of brain functionality, he hits himself again. 3 out of 3 times. Luckily he snaps out instantly this time, but this guy did not care, because one turn later, another Confuse Ray. But Floofty did it. He finally went one turn without hitting himself and lands a hit. Actually, make that 2. The redemption was finally on. Finally, Floofty hits one more Thundershock and Pumpkaboo is no more. And I wish that was as bad as it got, but it got so much worse. This guy then sent out a Bronzor. Not only was this a horrendous type for me to fight against, but he wasn't finished with his ultimate goal, confusing more of my team. The Bronzor instantly confuses Nami, but luckily she battles through it and gets a hit off, or barely any damage. Nami gets a Psywave for her troubles, which actually hurts a decent amount. And then we're back to this again. Another Psywave and yet another turn where Nami hits herself in confusion and she is on the brink of death. At this point, I'm getting flashbacks to the last final trainer battle before the gym leader, and I can see where this is going. I switch out Nami for Lucy because Bug was one of the only decent types I had. A couple of Psywaves later and I managed to at least get a stun spore off, but once again, we were here. Lucy, just like the others, decided that the real battle was with the voices in her head and decided to hit herself. One Psywave later and Lucy was gone. Knowing I was doomed, I sent out Bugsy, my strongest Pokemon on hand at the time. So, what was the Bronzor's first response? Do I even need to answer that? Me and Bugsy had been through a lot, so surely Bugsy could battle through the confusion, right? Wrong. First turn, he hits himself. Second turn, he hits himself. Third turn, he hits himself. Oh wait, he actually didn't, getting a tackle in. But don't sweat it, he was back to doing it on the next turn. Another Psywave later and Bugsy was again on the verge of death. I swapped to Floofty because it was one of the only fine matchups I had, and after getting a good chunk of damage in with 2 Thunder Shocks, a Psywave did way more damage than I was expecting and took Floofty out. 2 Pokemon lost. Needing a miracle, I sent out Bugsy to finish the job, and hopefully do enough damage to take out the Bronzor this turn before it can attack. And thankfully, Bugsy did it. But yet again, right before fighting the gym leader, I had just lost 2 Pokemon. Rest in peace, Lucy and Floofty. I added Bloom and Riley back to the team, and I was out for blood in this gym battle, so I ran eagerly up to Watson, or Wayne, and challenged him to a battle. He started with a Honedge, so I switched to Nami, and took it out pretty easily. His second Pokemon was a Farfetch'd, perfect for someone who had just lost their electric type. This thing slashed chunks out of Nami, so I had to switch to Riley. Farfetch'd and Riley into their Rayquaza and Rengoku arc, and they just kept throwing blows at each other until they both got really low. Then this cheat mother uses a super potion, and I have to swap out Riley as a result. I thought I said no more potions, huh? Because of this, I switched to Bugsy, and whilst taking some big damage, Bugsy gets it done. But then this guy sends out an Absol, and I very quickly understood what that meant. True to his lore, this Absol was an omen of disaster, but it wasn't a natural disaster. No, he was the disaster. Wanting to repeat what I did last time, I sent out Bloom in a hope I could Grass Whistle and set up. But then someone must have leaked my strategy because he instantly used his taunt. One singular bite later and Bloom was gone. This genuinely made me sad after the heroics of the last gym. My MVP was gone. Then 2 bites later and Bugsy joined them in the afterlife. It was then at this point that I remembered that Riley had a fighting type move, so if I just used him instead of Bugsy, maybe he would have survived. Luckily, Riley outsped Absol and hit the finishing blow. Another 2 Pokemon lost. But at the very least, after all this pain and loss, Nami was evolving, and it evolved into a... When will the pain stop? All I'd done here was lose a type for Stab, and not even for a good Pokemon either. I was so mentally defeated after this gym. Of all the Pokemon I'd caught, all but 5 remained, not even enough for a full team anymore. I can barely celebrate this victory, instead going to lay my fallen heroes to rest. Genuinely rest in peace Bloom and Bugsy. That Dooford gym performance will never be forgotten. Just like with Dooford, I wanted to leave this cursed town ASAP, so I went to get my bike and leave. Unfortunately, my destination was actually back to Dooford. Remember this route up here? I never actually caught my encounter here because I ran out of Pokeballs, so desperate times call for desperate measures, and back there I went just for that. And oh boy if I hadn't seen this scenario before. I named him Colin because if you know you know, and then instantly regretted that because somehow I forgot to capitalize the C. I would proceed to be bothered by that for the rest of the run. Caterpie would live a short life though, as Colin quickly evolved into a Poochyena, which was fine I guess. I then went back to Moorville, listened to a writer leak, and ran forwards to Route 111. Wanting to restock my team, I fished for my next encounter, and this little fella showed up. After getting flashbacks, I was luckily able to catch it first turn before it inevitably would have completely dodged me. I named it Keanu and added it to the team. It was then time for another encounter, this time to the right of Moorville in Route 118. It was yet another stone evolution, and I frankly couldn't be bothered to deal with it, so I called it Ken and sent it to the PC. Heading in the opposite direction now, I ran to the left of Moorville, and into Route 116, where I found a much better Pokemon. I swiftly caught the Swellow and named him Valor. Totally not a League reference, please don't judge me. I then went to level up the newly caught Pokemon, which led to Keanu evolving into a... Honestly, wasn't happy at the time, but looking back, the flying type was nice to have. Afterwards, I went to clear out the trainers on the bike route that I previously hadn't. Going further north, it was time for the Route 112 encounter, where I ran into a Timpole. Not mad about it. I caught it and named it Tish because I've been pretty into Paleo lately. Just like with Keanu, it was time for another evolution, this time for Colin, who evolved into a... Now this is much better. My luck with Pokemon was certainly improving. Route 112 led onto the fiery path, where I wasted no time into getting into my next encounter, which was a Carvanha. Well, was a Carvanha for about 30 seconds, until it really and luckily decided to crit Colin, who just so happened to have Anger Point as his ability, which for those of you who don't know, completely maxes out his attack stat if he's crit. So as you'd expect, Colin ended up one-shotting it and I missed my encounter for this route, struggling with success. It was time to backtrack again now, as I realised I'd missed some previous encounters and I wanted to go back for them. So that meant I sailed back to Petalburg with the fishing rod I never had before and encountered Nezuril. I quickly caught it and named it Josie. I then sailed back to Dewford and headed to Route 107 for another encounter, which was a Silcoon. Again, I quickly caught it and named it Ori. I went on one last voyage back to Slateport, where I fished for an Igglybuff that I caught and named Cece. Then somewhere along the line, Ori evolved into a... finally, a fire and a rock type. I will happily take that. And just as it seemed like everything was back on track, I accidentally ran into this guy. Introducing the sequel nobody asked for, the Rotom incident. Instantly, you can tell from the team I had on hand at the time, Rotom was a big problem. 2 water types and a flying type meant half my team was weak to it. Then there's Colin, a fighting type who had no offensive moves that could hit. Ori was freshly caught and at no level to fight, which left Tyler an Incada against a Rotom. So let's see how this genius played it out. Well, I instantly did one of the dumbest things I could. I switched out Valor for Colin. On the surface, seems fine, right? Probably the only Pokemon I had who could tank a hit. Not if I had anything to say about that. After getting hit with another Confused Ray right off the bat, I decided the move I was going to try and hit it with was Rock Smash. Unfortunately, he hit himself in confusion, just my luck. But even if it didn't, it literally wouldn't have affected Rotom. It's immune to fighting. Sitting here now, I genuinely don't understand what I was thinking at the time. Why did I do this? Either way, it didn't matter, and Colin got hit by an Uproar and then himself, which caused enough damage for me to need to switch him out. The plan from here? Well, Tyler was the only one I could trust to throw out due to typing, but again, I don't know what I expected. It's an Incada against a Rotom coming up against a turn 2 Uproar. It got one shot and Tyler was now gone. So I thought screw it, just send out my highest Pokemon and hope for the best. Nami tanked the turn 3 Uproar fairly well, and the Water Gun did a decent enough chunk, but still not much at all. Rotom then double teamed, which meant Nami could get off another Water Gun. It looked like maybe I could do this, until Rotom remembered the type matchup and used Thundershock, which also crit me. Then Nami proceeded to miss Water Gun thanks to double team. Wow, I've been unlucky this playthrough. I obviously didn't want to lose Nami, so I switched out for Valor, who instantly got taken to below half health with a Thundershock. Again, I'm genuinely so confused as to what past me was thinking here, because I used Quick Attack. Really? Maybe I was panicking and picked a priority move before thinking about the type, because again, Rotom is immune, and I didn't bother to check stats, but Swallow outspeeds Rotom. I could have hit a Stab, Aerial Ace, or Wing Attack. Maybe I realised it was resistant to flying, so I knew I wouldn't do much, and I just clicked the other move before thinking. Who knows, but either way, my stupidity cost Valor his life without a fighting chance. I really didn't know what to do here, so I made the incredibly stupid decision to send Colin back out, which meant I then straight away swapped him out for Shelly, wasting a turn and making Shelly vulnerable to being hit, and maybe even KO'd instantly. And Uproar left her on 3 HP, basically achieving that, because obviously Rotom outsped Shelly for the KO next turn. 3 Pokemon down, and at this point I knew it was done. Not like the other times either, fully actually doomed this time. Rotom outsped Nami to KO with another Uproar. Then it was poor Ori's turn, who, by the way, literally only knew Harden from being a Silcoon. There was nothing he could do. So sadly, Ori was a sitting duck and got taken out. And that left Colin, who was about as useful as Ori considering he too had nothing that could damage. So one last Uproar ended everything and made for a full clean sweep. My entire team gone, all thanks to some random trainer on Route 112. And the worst part is, I literally dodged this guy the first time I was here, but it was in this very spot I realised I missed encounters and I could go back for them. Then the next time I ran past, I forgot to dodge him again. How cruel such small things can be. I think this might have just been my canon event that truly slapped me in the face with the reality of how hard this challenge I'd given myself was, especially for a casual player like myself. Once again, I found myself at the PC, laying rest to not just a few, but my whole entire team. I know some people play with the rules that if you black out, you lose, but that's no fun to me. I've caught lots of Pokemon to use them, so if I have Pokemon left in the PC, I can still fight. Which meant all I could do here was restock the team with who I had left. Riley, Keanu, Frank, Tish, Josie, and Cece were all added to the party to make up my new team. Desperate once again, I cycled to Verdanturf Town to take part in a contest. I entered with Riley into a call contest, which we obviously won because, come on, look at how cool my boy is. The reason I did this though is because you get a gift Pokemon for taking part in your first contest, which is usually a Pikachu. However, not this time, as my new favourite fan gave me a Probopass with the same moveset as Rockstar Pikachu. This was a blessing, as it meant Probopass had access to Meteor Mash as soon as I got her. Naturally, this meant I had to go back to Slateport and give her a nickname, so I called her Peach because Probopass kinda looks like Mario. I then took a detour to the Battle House where one of them had the audacity to start out with a Snivy, and then finish off with a Litwick, God's way of reminding me of my past sins.
Getting back on track finally, I made my way back through Route 112, making sure to avoid him this time. It was past here that I received the tutorial for secret bases, but sadly I don't have any friends to do this with because everyone I ever loved is taken away from me right before my very eyes. I then entered this random old lady's house because my mother was too busy with match hooks to tell me about stranger danger, but I'd diverted enough. It was time to actually progress, so I made my way through Route 113 where I encountered a Poliwhirl. I caught it and named it Polly. Then, upon reaching Falborough Town, I was dragged into saving yet another professor. I headed left to Route 114, where I stupidly fished for a Pokemon using an old Broad instead of just walking down into the grassy area. I found a level 5 Shelmet, which was way too low of a level and not even able to evolve currently. I called it Sheldon and boxed it. Then, after some training, Frank evolved into a Mr. Mime, which I will happily take. Next was Meteor Falls, where I encountered a Makuhita. I caught it and named it Guts. Right after that, it was time to confront Team Magma, where Thomas and I battled together. Power Gem from Peach takes out Skiploom in one hit. Completely forgetting that Timpo wasn't ground type yet, I switch out Peach for Tish, who takes a bubble. Maze Dunsparce and proceeds to crit the Lantern with a takedown. That barely just survives it. Luck truly wasn't on my side because that right there would allow the Lantern to hit Tish with a Spark and KO it, before falling to another takedown. Cubone is the next who's easily taken down with a Chatter from Keanu. Annoyingly, a mixture of my slight idiocy and horrible luck meant that another Pokemon was down. My reward for winning was Archie scoring up to a literal child. Great move if you want to be put on the list. I went and laid Tish to rest and took a ride on the cable cars to Mount Chimney. Archie wasn't done scoring up with people just yet, so I cleared out some Magma Grunts and instantly had a rematch with Tabitha, or Jacqueline. Peach very easily took out both his Fennekin and Timpo. Cruel of him to use that against me after what just happened though. No losses this time, as we head to Maxie, or Cammy, for our first fight with him. His first Pokemon is Ivysaur, which Keanu easily defeats. He then sends out a Herdier, which actually nearly defeats Peach, so Riley is sent out to finish the job. Third and finally is Mr. Mime, which a Shadow Sneak from Greninja is enough to take it out easily, defeating Maxie. I'm given the Meteorite as he storms off, followed by Archie, who doesn't square up with me this time. Character progression. It's then time for another encounter, which was another one of the elemental monkeys. I catch it, name it Sanji because bro is cooking, and send it to the box. As soon as I enter Lava Ridge, I instantly go for a soak to relax and soothe my soul. I'm then given an egg that took such a long time to try and hatch, I just started walking around the region to give myself something to do, until I accidentally ran into another trainer battle. Pause. So, editing Craig here. During this walk, CC evolved into a Duskull, which I completely forgot to add into the script when recording and putting this together. So, yeah, that was a thing that happened. Anyway, back to the battle I was just about to enter. Polly took out Pansir very easily, no problem. Then her Herdier proceeded to crit Polly on a takedown, KOing it, and taking itself out in the process. Once again, I'd lost a Pokemon for just running into a trainer by accident that I'd long walked past. The silver lining here is that Josie at least got to evolve into a Jigglypuff. Yay! But wait, there's more, because the literal very next trainer after her I also accidentally ran into. The first Pokemon she used was Ditto, which Guts took care of with ease. Second was Goomy, which Guts was also able to handle. But the third? Oh, the one who shall not be named. When their first move is this, you know after everything I've been through so far, I am about to have a fun time. So, let's speedrun this. Guts hits himself. I swap out for CC, who gets hit with a Hypnosis and sent to sleep upon spawning. Sleep wasn't enough, so another Confuse Ray for your troubles, then a super effective Crunch, which basically means CC is out of action. Annoying enough yet? Pfft, of course not. Sand Attack. Then a Confuse Ray, and because what else? Frank hits himself, then misses, but also avoids a Hypnosis, then gets confused again, and of course, hits himself. Then is put to sleep, then a Crunch once again means he's done, so it's time for Josie. Another Sand Attack, then more confusion and you guessed it, she hits herself. Then after a Crunch, Josie only goes and hits herself, putting her out of action too. It's time for Sanji to cook, until he's put asleep instantly, then gets confused, then gets Sand Attacked. He wakes up, manages to actually hit through the confusion, but misses. Another Sand Attack and he misses again. So he gets confused again and bless him, he still manages to fight through it 3 turns straight, but misses again. What more can he do? A third Sand Attack hits, but damn it, Sanji is trying and actually hits it finally, but is then put to sleep and hit with another Sand Attack. After being hit with a Crunch, he wakes up and in spite of everything, still hits a Rock Smash. After being confused once more, he still powers through but misses. He's put back to sleep and then put out his misery next turn. Wow, poor guy. I don't think anyone else has tried harder to win for me so far. He really didn't deserve that. It's time for Guts again, who powers through a Sand Attack and KOs the one who shall not be named. Wow, that is a fight that did not need to happen, and now I'm 2 Pokemon down for simply just walking. But again, at least Guts gets to evolve into a... Wow, actually that's pretty good. Sadly, I had to lay Sanji to rest. Bro did not cook. and then finally hatched the egg. I was praying it was worth it, and thank God it was. I will happily accept the Hornedge, especially as not long after I found an Eviolite in this ash pile here. I named it Yomu because it literally is a ghost blade, if you know you know, and if you do, I'm sorry you know that. After I did some safe training against Hitmonlees who couldn't damage Yomu, next it was time to finally challenge another gym. I battled the few necessary trainers with a very close call here, but made it to Flannery with no losses for once, which left only one more thing to do: battle Preschooler Kate. She started off with the Lord! I am so sorry for what I'm about to do. The Lord survives one rock smash, getting a yawn in before being rock smashed again. The Lord might be down, but he still put the mighty Peach to sleep. He's too strong! She then sent out a Swordsbuck, and I do not need a repeat of Granbull and the dealing, knowing Peach is 4 times weak to fighting. So I sent out Keanu, hoping the type advantage would help me out, with a jump kick straight into outspeeding Keanu with a takedown actually KO Keanu, which obviously sucked. How many Pokemon have I led to their deaths already? Riley took his spot, which was risky, but it worked out, as a Force Palm paralyzed Swordsbuck who then couldn't move. This meant Riley could get off one more for the KO. Next was a Smoochum, and yeah, that got one hit KO'd by another Force Palm. So relatively safely and stress-free this time, I had now gotten my 4th gym badge. One very scary May jump scare later, and she kindly offered to take us back to Petalburg with her, so off we went. In Petalburg, I then lay breast to Keanu. It was then I realised I didn't actually want to be back here because I had an encounter in Route 115 I completely missed, so I sailed all the way back and travelled up to Meteor Falls once more. But not before I ran into this guy again. Oh is what I would say, but Peach crit on turn 2 and KO'd it. Peach, I actually love you. Now that worry was over very anticlimactically. It was off to Route 115 to fish for an encounter, where I found another Poochyena. I wasn't sure if Pokemon evolved into the same species in this run, so I caught it just in case and named it Bonsai. Watching the recording back, I don't know why I went all the way around the map when I could have literally just gone north of Rustboro if I was going to fish, especially if I was off to Rustboro next too. I continue to confuse myself. In Rustboro, I went to the Devoncorp to revive 2 fossils I found in the wild. Ironically, one of the fossils I revived was another Silcoon, so I was in the same situation again. Luckily it evolves quickly, so I went back to my trusty training spot and evolved it, just to find out that, yeah, it stays the same. I wasn't going to use Dupe, so back to Route 115 it was. I did keep Silcoon though, because that meant Ori had been revived. They live once more. At Route 115, I encountered a Whirlipede that I caught and named Pandora. That was enough sidetracking, as it was time to challenge the 5th gym. I cleared out the trainers really easily this time, showing thankfully my team was starting to stabilize, which meant all that was left was to face my dad. Oh boy, I haven't seen my dad in a while. I can't wait to have a nice, friendly battle with— what the fuck? This guy against his own son decided to start off with a Ho-Oh? That's cruel, Norman. Luckily, this was an amazing matchup for Peach, who had Stab on a Power Gem that was 4 times strong against Ho-Oh, and near enough one-shot it. Norman full restored, but it wouldn't matter as Peach would one-shot crit Ho-Oh the next turn. Okay, Dad, good one. You really caught me by surprise there. Oh, what the fuck? Because that wasn't enough, Norman then sends out Dialga straight after. This guy really went to catch 2 legendaries just to beat his own son. I know he said he'd do everything he can to win, but come on. I see why your wife left you for Macho. Dialga was definitely going to be harder than Ho-Oh, but I did have a plan. I used Rock Smash on turn 1 to lower Dialga's defense. I did this again on turn 2 for the same reason. Unfortunately, turn 3 didn't lower Dialga's defense, but you can see Peach is doing more damage than before. I didn't want to risk losing Peach to another Dragon Claw, so I sent out Riley, who I knew would outspeed Dialga. He took a Dragon Claw, but proceeded to KO Dialga the next turn with a Force Palm. Thankfully, his final Pokemon was an Ambipom that Riley took out with 2 Force Palms. Somehow, of all the battles in the game so far, the only one where I'd come across a legendary, 2 of them in fact, didn't result in any losses, yet a Deerling drew blood and a Litwick sweeped half my team. What even is this playthrough? I collected my badge and for what felt like the first time in a while, left the gym without needing to lay any of my team to rest. Crystal then took me to Moorville whilst our parents decided who was the worst father, the one who raised the cheater or the one who just went ultra tryhard against his own son. Crystal's dad did give me Surf though, so he's in my good book. I taught Surf to Riley and made my way over to the right of Route 118, where I was greeted by Steven, and then a Latias just spawns in. I forgot how abruptly this just happens in the story, like it really does just happen. But nonetheless, off to Southern Island we were. Before being able to catch the Latios in front of us, we were confronted by Team Magma again, where Steven and I teamed up to take them on. Gligar one-shot Joltik with Acrobatics, and Peach one-shot Masquerain with Power Gem. Easy stuff. And instead of catching the Latios, it just joins our team. But don't be fooled, this is no Latios. It's very clearly a Mew using Transform. As legendaries go, I won't complain about having the one who can learn everything. You'll make a fine HM slave. I named it Wisp because it looks like one of those wacky little fellas from Sonic Colors. After that little detour, it was onwards to Route 119, where my first encounter was a Lampent. Cool, but again, how am I evolving this? I caught it and named it Calcifer. I then made my way through the route and all the way up to the Weather Institute, where yet again Team Magma was also there. I took out the grunts and then faced Tabitha again, who was honestly easier than the grunts this time. They wanted to give me a Pokemon as a reward, but I already caught my encounter here, so I walked away and proceeded to completely forget to ever come back here and check what it actually was. Some say he's still waiting here to this day. I was then greeted by another Thomas jump scare, who challenged me to a battle. She started with a Cherubi, who Yomu took out with an Aerial Ace. She then sent out Wormadam, who faced the same fate. Third and finally, it was Jigglypuff, who was taken out by a Meteor Mash from Peach. I then carried on forwards and made my way to Fortree, where I was instantly asked to follow Steven straight out of there. Well, it was lovely being here, I guess. I went onwards to Route 120, where I took a second to get my first encounter, which was a Quilladin. I caught it and named it Illumi because they both be spiky boys. After progressing further in the route, I was given the Devon Scope to scout out those pesky Kecleons and return to the city. It was time to challenge the 6th gym. Just like with the last two, I cleared out the trainers with no problems. Thank God those days are behind me. All that was left was to make my way up to the top and battle Preschooler Pansy. Her first Pokemon was a Seviper. Peach got a crit on a Meteor Mash, got her to use the Full Restore, and then put Seviper back down to roughly the same HP with a Power Gem. Another one finished the job. Second was Aerodactyl, who Peach missed a Meteor Mash on and was roared out for Wisp. I thought it'd be funny to Metronome here, so after receiving a crunch, Wisp Metronome and used Milk Drink just to heal it back. Another crunch and Metronome later, and this time Wisp used Arm Thrust. Yeah, no more of that. I switched Wisp for Peach, who got taken scarily low by a crunch, but yet another crit and a Meteor Mash was enough to get the one-hit KO. Her third Pokemon was Zebstrika, so I switched to Yomu. He tanked a Flame Charge, then used Sword Stance. Next turn, Yomu used a Shadow Sneak for half health and took one more Flame Charge. A second Shadow Sneak took priority and finished Zebstrika off. The fourth and final Pokemon was a Fracture. I switched Yomu for Riley, and thanks to Fracture using just Dragon Dance for 3 turns straight, Riley had a free win and took it out. Another clean gym leader battle with no losses. I collected my 6th gym badge and left for Route 121. I forgot how long these routes went on for. The scenery is beautiful though. During this journey, Yomu finally evolved into a... could have been better, could have been worse. I also got my Route 121 encounter here, which was a Duwop that I caught and named Zoro. I wanted to head into the Safari Zone for another encounter, but just before I did, I was forced into this double battle, where holy sh**, another Dialga? They're just giving them away for free in this region. A Force Power from Riley does okay damage, but a Dragon Claw backline's a scary crit. An Earth Power from Peach does enough to get it in the red, and well, Frillish is just kinda there. Naturally, I have to switch Riley out, which I do for Yomu. Dialga took the Earth Power personally, and does one back to Peach that hits for massive damage. Peach returned the favour and took it out. Frillish is still just kinda there, until Yomu and Guts decided to kick her from the Xbox Live party chat. I then proceeded to go in, encounter a Bellsprout, and stupidly one-shot it with a Power Gem. A Probopass into a Bellsprout? What did I expect? So that whole encounter with Dialga was for nothing. I couldn't even make it to Lily Cove in peace because this thing was running around in the wild with Arena Trap. Peach is 4 times weak to ground and I couldn't switch it out. One Earthquake from it, half health Peach, and I'm genuinely lucky it went for Mud Bomb next turn and not another Earthquake, otherwise Peach would have been lost here. So because the route wasn't already long enough, now I had to tiptoe slowly through the grass to avoid the Dugtrios. I did eventually make it to Lily Cove, and I wasted no time in entering my next battle with Thomas, which would thankfully be our last before the Pokemon League. She started with a Basculin that I had no real good matchups for because Illumi was underleveled, so I switched to Guts who instantly got hit with a Soap. This was annoying because Guts then got hit with a massive takedown that he usually would have been immune to if his type wasn't changed. Guts then used Fly, avoided the next attack, and hit for some decent damage. The problem here was Basculin was faster than Guts, who couldn't afford another hit like that, so I sent Peach back in, who I could have just not switched out to begin with. Another soak later, and Peach took down Basculin with a Power Gem. She then proceeded to send out Olivani, perfect for a Pokemon who just got changed to Water type. I opted to keep Peach in to get off a super effective Power Gem, but an equally as super effective Leaf Blade puts Peach in half health, and a now non-stab Power Gem only half health Olivani. In order to not lose Peach, I sent out Frank, who got hit with a Slash. That's annoying because Peach probably could have taken that and KO'd Livani with another Power Gem. Next turn, Frank then gets chunked massively by a Leaf Blade and is left on 7 HP. A Bug Bite in return does damage, but not enough. In hindsight here I could have done something better, but with Riley, Yomu and now Peach being weak to grass, Guts low on HP, and Wisp who was a legendary I was trying not to use, I thought Frank and Bug Bite was my best bet. Unfortunately I cut my losses and one more Slash took out Frank. The first loss in a while. I sent out Riley and for some reason decided to go with a Shadow Sneak because I thought it would hit to KO, but it didn't. Riley outspeeds Livani, so I don't know why I didn't just Feint Attack, and one Leaf Blade later, Riley was near death. Another Shadow Sneak finished it off, but the huge damage could have been avoided, especially as the next Pokemon was Mischievous, who Riley was good into. I switched to Yomu, who still pretty easily took care of it with 2 Nightshades. Her final Pokemon was a Wigglytuff. After mostly defense co-spamming, Yomu put aside his feelings and got the job done. Although I was glad to be done with May in this run, I was annoyed she finally decided to take a team member down with her on her final attempt. And one who'd been with me since Rustboro too. Rest in peace, Frank. I then went into the magma hideout to get my next encounter. It was a level 5 Voltorb. At this point I knew I should be able to fish better things in this, and I realised it was because I was still using the old rod. So I caught the Voltorb, named it Ziggs because... and instantly worked on upgrading that rod. I flew back to Moorville and surfed over to this guy near where I encountered Latias to collect the good rod. With the new and improved good rod, I fished for my Lily Cove encounter, which was a Routes. Now I don't even blame myself for this next bit, because Zoro hit the Routes with a Razor Shell and one hit KO'd it. I went and looked at the stats and wow, I had no idea Routes defense was this bad. Another encounter lost. It was then time to follow Team Magma to Mount Pyre, where I ran into my encounter for Route 122. It was a Grimer that I caught and named Magellan because I'd literally just finished him pulled down from One Piece and he was a cool poison man. At Mount Pyre, my first encounter was a Rog and Roller, which I caught and named Brock. I made my way to the summit where I was greeted by Magma Grunts. I took them out and progressed onwards to battle Courtney. Her first Pokemon was an oh god this thing. Peach landed a crit with a Rock Smash and then another crit on a Meteor Mash. She was not playing around. Luckily it mostly used Psych Up and Peach very easily took it out. I claimed the Blue Orb as my prize. Afterwards I then flew back to Slateport to bear witness to a Grand Theft Auto, and then I'm confronted by 2 more Grunts who were only ever really fodder. Back to the Magma Hideout I went, where this time I could fully explore the place. I roamed around enough to pick up the Master Ball, and then made my way in deeper. I 1v5'd the whole group of Grunts because I am quite simply him, and was challenged by Courtney again. Didn't I literally just beat you? Yeah, whatever, I'll do it again. Her one and only Pokemon was a Fearow, so naturally Peach made quick work of that. And that was it for Courtney. I last battle with her for the run. She leaked the plan to us as if we couldn't stop them when that's literally all we've been doing this whole time. Maybe she is actually just a bot. I then set sail to Route 124, where my first encounter was a Leafeon. I caught it and named it Sage. I quickly made my way through Route 124 to reach Mossdeep, where I instantly picked up the Super Rod. Naturally, this meant fishing for my Mossdeep encounter, which was a Butterfree. I swiftly caught it and named it Weevil. I then used the Super Rod to my advantage and trained here for a while. Whilst doing this, Illumi evolved into an Exploud, and Zoro later evolved into a Meanshao. Not bad at all. After training for a long time, it was time for the 7th gym challenge. I very nearly lost Guts early on in the gym, getting worryingly low whilst poisoned. He lived though, and the rest of the gym went smoothly. The only challenge left were the twins at the end. So the battle started, and then the most heartbreaking thing since Bloom's death all the way back in Moorville happened. Knowing it was dangerous, I kept Riley out as his Force Palm was one of the best shots I had against Phylus. So Riley did just that, and it hit for good damage. Then, before I could even process what was going on, this happened. Riley, who had been with me since Route 103, got one-shot crit by a Petal Dance. My longest-serving partner who'd been with me for the whole run, gone in the blink of an eye, just like that. What a horrible loss that was. Not only such a good Pokemon to have, but one who'd been with me through the highs and the lows. No time for mourning just yet though, as I had a battle to win. A Meteor Mash to Phylus did some good damage, and then Guts took Riley's place next to Peach. The twins then used a full restore, completely undoing anything Riley had done, making his loss kinda futile. I was not happy. Another Petal Dance did barely anything to Peach, and on the next turn, Guts one-shot Maractus with a Fly, a taste of your own medicine. That left only Phylus, who took another Meteor Mash and got healed again. This Pokemon just won't lose. However, a turn of being hit after healing left it paralysed, and then was defeated the turn after. My 7th gym badge had officially been earned. Upon beating the gym, the earth shook and Steven instantly dragged me into his house to talk. He then gave me the scuba gear. After that brief conversation, I had the unfortunate job of saying goodbye to Riley. You served me well, my friend. Rest up. What sucked about that loss is I now needed to use Dive, and I just had to say goodbye to my best Water-type Pokemon. So Wisp had to come out again to be taught Dive, and Exploud had to be taught Surf. I did some training to level up and evolve Brock, only to find out that he evolved into Zoro, another dupe. I couldn't be bothered to go back and recatch a new Pokemon again, so I didn't. After losing Riley, I wanted to patch the hole in my heart by catching more Pokemon, so I did just that. I went north of Mossdeep to Route 125 and encountered a whoa. I caught that as quickly as I could before things got messy and named it Jessie. Further north was Shoal Cave, where I encountered a Carablast that I caught and named Firefly. This was genuinely perfect. In the ROM I was playing, you could set impossible evolutions to off, which changed the requirements, and these were the new requirements for Shelmet and Carablast. So I big brained it and got them both one battle off leveling up, so they'd both level up together in the same party, evolving both at the same time. And then when that finally happened, it didn't. I clearly forgot to change that setting, and I wasted my time. More encounters were needed, so I headed to Route 127 and encountered a Shroomish that I caught and named Spore. I trained my team some more, and Spore eventually evolved into a wow, yeah, I will take that. Good stuff. I changed training spots to level up a whole new team, and during this, CC evolved into a Gramble. I finally had the fairy coverage I've been wanting the whole run. Then it was Pandora's turn, who evolved into a... again, another type I really wanted for coverage. This was great. Things were looking good. It was then back to Mossdeep Super Raw training to get them at a high enough level to battle. Once satisfied, I set up my new team and set off for Route 128, where I encountered a Curlier. I redeemed the ROMs of the routes and caught this one, naming it Mob. Having a new Pokemon meant back to Super Raw training, leading Mob to evolve into a Drapion. Pretty good. Route 128 led me to the seafloor cavern where my first encounter was a Vaporeon. I know what you're thinking, you sick freak. Stop that. This was perfect though, as I now had a Pokemon to teach Surf, Dive, and Waterfall to. So what did I do? Well, after so many turns of refusing to be caught, I misclicked Runaway. Watching this back was extremely cringe and embarrassing, so we're gonna move on like this never happened. Route 128 led me to the seafloor cavern, where I instantly ran straight to Maxie. He gave me another grand speech, but we ain't reading all that, and we battled for the final time. He sent out a Piloswine first, who was met by Guts. You might be wondering where Peach is, and sadly she was at the level cap, so I couldn't use her without over-leveling and making her unusable in the next gym. This was not a good matchup, so I switched out for Sage. He also randomly swapped Piloswine for Scrafty, so that was a thing that happened. I swapped out again for Zoro, who got hit with a Scary Face. This sucked because it meant the incredibly slow Scrafty managed to outspeed the pretty nimble Zoro for huge damage before being one-shot right after. This wouldn't have happened without that. Piloswine then re-emerged, who was met once again by Sage, 2 Giga Drains later, and Sage dealt with it easily. The third Pokemon was a Haxorus, and oh boy, Sage tried to Grass Whistle and completely missed, whilst Haxorus got off a Dragon Dance. You can see where this is going. I switched to Guts, which was a mistake because that meant he got off another Dragon Dance. Then this happened. Guts got one-shot by a Dragon Claw after Haxorus was given time to set up. After being such an important member for so long, this was nearly as sad as Riley's goodbye. It was looking pretty bleak at this point, I can't lie. I sent out a Lumi thinking maybe he could tank a hit. He got taunted, which was good because it gave a free turn to Crunch. But then the next turn, a Dragon Claw one-shot again. Then I sent out Zoro, but I don't know what else I expected to happen, as a faster Haxorus obviously finished Zoro off with a Dragon Claw. Pandora was up next, who did thankfully barely tank a Dragon Claw to get off a discharge for some good damage, but it wasn't enough. Sadly, no taunt, and another Dragon Claw KO'd the 4th member of my party. I knew Sage had a good chance to outspeed Haxorus, which he did to finish it off. Very luckily, the final Pokemon was a Bastiodon that barely did any damage, and Sage was able to out-heal and out-damage with a few Giga Drains. Almost all the new team I had literally just spent forever training up was gone, barely a few battles after being formed. Groudon then appeared and ran away. Maxie decided to start reflecting on his actions towards Groudon, completely neglecting the 4 Pokemon he had just canonically killed. Get your priorities straight, Maxie. Like, yeah, I know the Hoenn region is doomed and it's all your fault and all that stuff, but spare a thought for Guts. Archie is then the first adult in the game to acknowledge that everything has been left to a 10-year-old kid and apologizes. You know what, I'll drop the charges from earlier. Remorsefully, it was then time to say goodbye to basically a whole team once again. Rest in peace Guts, Illumi, Zoro, and Pandora. In the same spot again, I restocked my team and left for another encounter in Route 128. It was a Linoon that I caught, named Tanuki, and wait, no, don't send it there! I know I get all my Pokemon killed, but don't just send it there straight away. Give me a chance. Shortly after, I entered Sutopolis and met up with the whole gang, where they once again left the fate of the world to a 10-year-old kid. Oh, and then May arrived because she thinks she's part of the team. Only one thing was left to do, and that was to finally encounter the big boss of the region, the one who would bring about the end of Hoenn and maybe all of mankind itself. I reached the center of the cave, rode on the back of it through lava, and there it was, right in front of me. It was time to finally confront Virizion. Wait, what? How are you standing on that without being burnt to a crisp? I found it! The only grass type immune to fire! Yeah, I wasn't about to risk anything on this, and just threw a Master Ball at it. Call me boring all you want, I've been through enough pain this run. Obviously, that captured Virizion, and I named it Sakura. The region was saved as some pretty shiny stuff fell from the sky. May, we are not the same. Go away. After losing my fly Pokemon, I decided to try the Eon Flute just as a laugh, and apparently it still works, even when I quite simply don't own a Latios. I was so stunned that a Pokemon ran up on me before I had even moved. It was a Larvesta with no wings and no reason to be chilling up there. I caught it though and named it Helios. A final task remained for me in this city, which was the gym, but before that was my first encounter here. So I fished outside the gym where I encountered a dupe. Then another dupe, then a third dupe, a fourth dupe, and okay, I've never been happier to see a Magikarp. I caught it and named it Poseidon, King of the Seas, until it evolved and very quickly became the town jester. Luckily, shortly after Magellan evolved into a Heatmore, which I will happily take the fire coverage. It was time for the 8th and final gym challenge. Honestly, I had no struggles here with the trainers, so it was smooth sailing to the gym leader, and once I got to the end, I was challenged to a battle by the final gym leader, Preschooler Noel, which also meant the return of Peach. He started out with a Bellsprout, so I swapped out Peach for Helios, who obliterated it with a Flame Charge. Next out was Tropius, so Peach was back in. A single Power Gem one-shot Tropius to get a second KO. Third was Cofagrigus, so I sent in Yomu, who had also returned to the team. Cofagrigus wasn't using any damaging moves, so Yomu used 2 Swords Dances before finally being hit with a Shadow Ball in turn 3, but it was too late as a Night Slash one-shot KO'd it. His 4th Pokemon was a— oh no! Guts! I'll make this quick, buddy. And quick it was, as one Night Slash took it out, and thankfully no aftermath. Thanks, bud. Sneasel was last, so Peach came back out to finish the job with a Meteor Mash. And that was it, the final gym defeated. I collected my last gym badge to complete the collection, and was given Waterfall as a reward. All that was left for me in this run was to head up to the Pokémon League and challenge the Elite Four and Steven. But before doing this, I went and collected as many Pokémon as I could. There were so many encounters here, so I'll go through them as quickly as I can. The first place I went was Mirage Cave because I felt like flying, where I encountered a Darmanitan. It KO'd itself. Great start. Next was the Nameless Cavern, which I mainly entered out of curiosity to discover, so this is where you've been hidden. Wait, no, didn't I just ride you to get here? Did you take me back to your place? So I swiftly ran because that does not work for me, brother. Also because it kept recovering and I really didn't care enough to waste any more Pokeballs. Back down below now, and the next destination was Route 129, where I encountered a Tranquil. This time I actually caught the encounter and named it Nimbus. Further to the left was Route 130, where I encountered a Venonat, which an unlucky crit from a Shadow Sneak killed, 1 for 4 so far. Next up was Route 131, where I encountered a Relicanth. A successful catch this time, I named it Dwayne. Pacific Town was next, not sure why this place exists, but it's cool. Here I encountered a Mightyena. I caught it and named it Amaterasu. Not stopping there, Route 132 was next on the list, where I encountered a Boldle, another Pokemon I can't evolve. I caught it and named it Clay. Further down the Grand Line was Route 133, where I encountered, Leo. I ran because I couldn't bring myself to KO it, and because it was a dupe. I then moved spots and wait, hold on, Craig, this is Route 132. What are you doing? I think past me thought it was Route 133 because I caught the Ekans and named it Orochimaru. Whatever, I guess, it's not like I caught an extra in Route 133, so it's fine. Finally, Route 134 was the last stop. I encountered a Sphere, which I caught and named Lapis. Before going to Evergrande City, which isn't even a city, the illegal Orochimaru evolved into a... yeah, I was never using that, so at least that's the illegal Pokemon out of action permanently. It was time for the final stretch of the run. Just before I made my way up the waterfall, I encountered a Misdreavus, another Pokemon I couldn't evolve. I caught it and named it Phantom. Then I climbed the water and entered Evergrande City, the bustling city with just a singular Pokemon Center. I wasted no time and ran straight to Victory Road, where I encountered a Gulpin. I caught it and named it Dango. I then made my way through Victory Road, avoiding trainers where I could so I could be at full power for the final showdown with Wally. I defeated the trainers I couldn't avoid and eventually reached the venue of our final battle. I approached Crystal and he challenged me to one last match before the Pokemon League. He started out with a Weezing that Peach took care of with 2 Power Gems. Next was Mean Shower, which was a horrible matchup for Peach. So I switched her out for CC. The Mean Shower would hilariously miss a jump kick for nearly half his health. A Drain Punch would heal for barely anything, and a Play Rough was enough for the KO. Third out was Roselia, so I swapped out CC for Magellan, who instantly got badly poisoned. Not ideal at all. Roselia then got a crit on a Petal Blizzard that didn't do too much damage, and a Slash back chunked her health quite a bit. Annoyingly, she then used Synthesis, but a Slash on a crit would take her down to even less health than before. The poison meant I had to swap out Magellan for Yomu, whilst Roselia healed up again. She then badly poisoned Yomu, who would take her out with an Aerial Ace. Vullaby was out next, so Peach was back. 1 Power Gem was enough to KO Vullaby. Last out was Ludicolo. He barely did any damage to Peach at all, so 4 Power Gems later and Wally had been defeated. A final showdown where I don't actually lose a Pokemon. Thank God. Literally the only thing I had left to do now was beat the Elite Four and Steven. I didn't know what to do for the level cap here, so I looked up opinions and it seemed like there were a few options. Some people used the Champion's Ace as the level cap, some people used the final member of the Elite Four's Ace as the level cap, and some people even average out all the levels of the Pokemon used in the league and set the average level as the level cap. I decided to go with the second option, as fighting the whole Elite Four with a full team of over-level Pokemon would be unfair, especially if they're gaining XP throughout the 4 fights. And the third option, whilst clever, was way too much effort. The second seemed pretty fair, so 55 was the level cap. I then went and trained in Victory Road for literal hours, ready for the final challenge. Many hours later, and I was finally ready to take them on. The team I was using was Peach, Sage, Yomu, CC, Sport, and Magellan, all at level 55. It was time to open the doors and start. This is what it all led up to. I made my way to the first of the 4 rooms, which was Sydney's. I challenged him to a battle, and we began. He started with a Roselia, so I switched to Magellan. A Petal Dance did a bit of damage, but a Flamethrower was enough to one-hit KO it. Next out was a Lunatone, who used Future Sight. A Meteor Mash meant it survived at 1 HP, so it got Forest Stone the next turn. A Rock Smash was used to save move PP, forgetting he would just heal Lunatone on that HP. It then proceeded to say "F this" and use Explosion, which took it out and did literally nothing to Peach. What a sad way to go out. Peach then got hit by Future Sight, which hit for a bit of damage. His third Pokemon was Zangoose, and what happens next is genuinely shocking. His Zangoose uses close combat and one-shots Peach. Maybe it's my fault for leaving Peach out there when I could have swapped for Sport, but I had no idea Zangoose could know this move, so I was clueless. My best Pokemon, who'd been my MVP the entire run since I got it, KO'd in the first round. I couldn't believe it. So I very angrily sent out Spore and hit him with a close combat of our own to one-hit KO it. Chansey was out next, and I wasn't taking any chances with that Diamond and Pearl health bar merchant, so another close combat one-hit KO'd the Chansey. Bisharp was the final Pokemon, and being 4 times weak to fighting meant a wake-up slap from Spore easily took it out in one shot. 1 down, 4 more to go, but with no Peach, I didn't know if it was possible anymore. It was onward to spooky scary Phoebe next, who was just backing it up for no reason at all. I challenged her to a battle, and it was time for our second matchup. She started with a Servine, and I started with Sage, so naturally I insta-switched to Magellan again. A Koyo and a Ring Up did a bit of damage, but not that much. And a Flamethrower one-hit KO'd it. A good start. Wailmer was next, so I had to get Magellan out of there. Sage came in for the save, who used a Swords Dance and got hit with a Water Spout that actually did a decent amount of damage. A Leaf Blade next turn was enough to one-shot it though. Magma was third, which meant Sage now needed to get out of there, so Magellan was back, and was saved thanks to her ability Flash Fire. Magma used a Sunny Day next turn, and then avoided a Mud Bomb, but thanks to Magma only using Sunny Day from this point on, 2 more Mud Bombs landed to take it out. The 4th Pokemon was a Hippowdon, so it was time for Sage to save the day again. A Leaf Blade so very nearly KO'd it, but it lived and hit Sage with a takedown that did quite a bit of damage. Knowing Phoebe would full restore, I used this to my advantage and Giga Drain for Sage to take some of that HP for himself. One more Giga Drain finished the job and healed Sage back to nearly full HP. Perugly was out last, so I switched to Spore, who got hit with a Swagger and was now confused. A Body Slam then paralyzed Spore, but it fought through both to one-shot with a Wake Up Slap. 2 down, 3 to go, and no losses this time. That's more like it. I was feeling better after that last battle, so my morale was a little higher heading into the next room. The third room was Glacier's, who gave me this kinda creepy stare as I challenged her to a battle. It was time for match number 3. Samurott was out first, which was great for me as I started with Sage. Leaf Blade one-shot the Samurott, a perfect start. Next up came Darmanitan, so the dynamic duo were at it again, and I swapped out Sage for Magellan, who I knew would be safe from fire moves. Darmanitan hit a Torn, and next turn used Superpower for some good damage. A Mud Bomb would then hit for half health. Then, on the next turn, my incredibly amazing luck with being crit meant a Superpower would crit and consequently KO Magellan. I've lost so many important Pokemon to crits this run, I hate it here. CC was out next, and luckily Darmanitan used Taunt for no damage and was KO'd by a Player Up. Gigalith was the third, so Spore was sent out. Gigalith then used Stealth Rock, which was wildly annoying. A close combat was survived thanks to Sturdy, and Gigalith then proceeded to crit on the Stone Edge. Have I not been crit enough? A full restore was then used, but a Wake Up Slap into a second Wake Up Slap took out the Gigalith. Then, my worst nightmare appeared, an Aegislash. This thing is resistant to 8 different types, then double resistant to Bug, and then even completely immune to 3 more types. And the 4 types that were good against it, I only really had Yomu to help with that, a pseudo-Rudo who knew Night Slash and Shadow Sleep. I kept Spore out there because Surf was one of the only moves I had that Aegislash didn't resist, and I didn't fancy swapping out to give this thing a free hit and probably KO whoever I sent out. Proving my point, Surf hit for barely anything, and an Aerial Ace left Spore on 15 HP. Not wanting to lose another Pokemon, I sent out Yomu to help. An Aerial Ace barely did anything luckily, but on the next turn it used King's Shield, protected itself against a Night Slash, and lowered Yomu's attack. We both then took a turn to Sword Stance, but mine was unfortunately an attempt to get back the attack I just lost. This guy then decided to use Sacred Sword, which KOs Yomu, another member down, and I'm now currently left with half the team I came in with, 2 basically with Spore's current HP. CC is out next, and it was only then I realized she knows Payback. Might have been helpful to remember this earlier, but whatever. A King's Shield once again protects Aegislash from being hit, and lowers CC's attack. Next turn, CC used Will-O-Wisp just to get some confirmed damage on it each turn. An Aerial Ace then does shockingly little, and CC gets a payback off, before being hit by another Aerial Ace, but annoyingly the burn actually tipped it over the HP threshold for the CPU to use a full restore, so that ended up backfiring. A payback then does ridiculous damage to Aegislash, nearly killing it. A King's Shield stalls the turn, and lowers CC's attack again, which annoyingly means it actually barely tanks a payback on the next turn. One last Aerial Ace nearly KOs CC, leaving her on 2 HP, but she lives to hit another payback and finally take down the raid boss. Dugong was the last Pokemon out, and I could only really use Sage here, so that's exactly what I did. 1 Leaf Blade was enough to one-shot it, and I barely made it out alive to tell the tale. But that was a sucker punch of a battle. 3 down, 2 left to go. With only half my team left, I made my way to the 4th room and entered to see Drake just standing there, menacingly. No time to waste though, as I approached him ready to start the 4th battle, and that we did. It was time to fight the last Elite Four member, and disastrously, his first Pokemon was a Magmar, a horrible matchup for Sage. So I swapped out for Spore, and Magmar used its free turn to Sunny Day. On the next turn, it then used Lava Plume, which did a good chunk of damage. Spore used Surf, and it was here I learned, don't just use moves that fit the type matchup, as Spore was never doing any damage whenever he used Surf. His special attack was dreadful, and it was really showing. I'm glad I was learning, but now was not the time to be testing that out. Magmar hit another Lava Plume, and the worst possible thing happened. Spore got burned. Luckily Spore at least crit on a Wake Up Slap to KO it, but once again, Spore was out of the battle. And then things got even worse, because his next Pokemon was... It had been so long since the last legendary showed up, and now was the worst time it could have happened. I swapped in Sage, but it didn't exactly excel in special defense, so it took a lot of damage from a Psychic. It was here I was left with a horrible choice. Do I swap out for CC, or do I keep Sage in? If I keep Sage in, what do I do? Do I go for safe damage and a Leaf Blade, or do I risk the golden play of Grass Whistle actually landing and setting up? I risked it all with a Grass Whistle, but predictably missed, and a Psychic crit Sage for the KO. Can we stop with the crits? CC was my only option now, and looking back I'm pretty sure I once again forgot about Payback, because why didn't I send in CC the first time? You used Metronome to lock into a super effective Bullet Punch that actually didn't do much. Payback then oh so nearly KO'd the Mew, so you know what that means, a 4 restore next turn. I then used Strength for reasons I genuinely can't remember, that was a little stupid. Psychic then chunked CC for a lot, before another Payback got the KO. The next Pokemon sent out was Gyarados, another tough one. Luckily it missed on a Hydro Pump, and a player off from CC hits for most of itself. Then annoyingly a 4 restore is used, but another player off makes that redundant. Problem is, Gyarados outspeeds CC, so it hit the Hydro Pump this time for the KO. With Spore being on 15 HP with a burn, the Pokemon League challenge was over. Another Hydro Pump hit and that was it. I lost. I blacked out and woke up back by the healing station. I told myself if I lost here, my run was over. These were the best I had, and I'd invested so much time into them. But then something came over me. I was right. I had invested too much time to just let it end here. I was doing this thing for better or for worse. So what did I do? I restocked my team with the few evolvable Pokemon I had left. As you can see here, most of the Pokemon remaining can't actually evolve, or are fully evolved and just not good, making them next to useless. So I selected the very few that I could, and I got to leveling them up. The first Pokemon to evolve was Lapis, evolving into a Litleo. It wouldn't stay this way for long though, as that Litleo then evolved into a Roserade. Not bad, but it literally learned 0 moves from here on out, so what was I supposed to do with it? Next in line was Dango, who evolved into a Swallow. It actually kept its evolution, which is really cool. The first and only time this happened. Ziggs was next, who evolved into a Seadra, which gave me access to my first and final Dragon-type move this late into the run. It was Nimbus's turn after, who evolved into a Chestnut. Now that is nice. After leveling up my team to the level cap, it was time to challenge once more. My new team was Sakura, Ziggs, Nimbus, Mob, Ori, and Wisp. I know I have 2 legendaries, but the moment I saw that Mew, I knew it was fair game. And who knows if Drake or even Steven has another one. So with my newly built team, it was truly time for one last run. It was now or never. If I failed this challenge, I was surrendering the run. I stormed my way into Sydney's room, ready for the rematch. With my prior knowledge, I tactically selected Ori to start this one. A Petal Dance does half health Ori, but a Flamethrower one-hit KOs Roselia. Next out is the Cursed Zangoose, who now gets put against Sakura for his past sins. A singular Sacred Sword is enough to take it out. Lunatone is up next, so Sakura uses Giga Drain to nearly take it out. Knowing a 4 Restore is next, Sakura uses a Swords Dance to set up. Another Giga Drain is used for the same result, whilst Lunatone uses Future Sight. Another 4 Restore is used, and Lunatone gets hit with a Sacred Sword that one-hit KOs it. Chansey is out 4th, so Sakura uses another Swords Dance whilst Chansey misses. The Future Sight hits for insane damage. Unfazed by this, Sakura one-shots Chansey with a Sacred Sword. Blast up his Pawniard, and you know how this one ends, just like the others for the win. 1 down, and no losses. Once again, I storm into Phoebe's room, reinvigorated. Ori's first out, again knowing she'll start with Servine, who tanks a Giga Drain and barely doesn't KO with Flamethrower. However, RNG is finally on my side, as the Clutch Burn finishes off before a 4 Restore can be used. Wailmer is out second, so Sakura comes back out and gets hit with a Water Spout, the exact same chain of events from the first battle. This one barely does any damage though, as Sakura one-shots with a Giga Drain on the next turn. Magmar is third, so Ziggs is tagged in for this round. A Fire Punch does basically nothing, and a Surf next turn one-shots it. Hippowdon is next, but it gets instantly one-shot by another Surf. Perugly is out last again, so Sakura is sent back out to be greeted by a Swagger. Unlike last time, Sakura hits itself in confusion for decent damage, and is sent to half health by a Body Slam. Next turn, Sakura does hit with a Sacred Sword that one-shots the Perugly. 2 down, still no losses. It's time for payback on Glacier now for what she did before, so I run into her room and waste no time challenging her to a rematch. Sakura is first out and doesn't manage to one-hit KO with a Giga Drain. A 4 Restore is used, so another Giga Drain is used. One more finishes the job. Then it's time for the Ray Boss to come back out, and she instantly comes in swinging with Acre Slash. I switch to my best bet here, Mob. An Aerial Ace is hit for not much at all, and to my surprise, a Crunch from Mob just straight up one-shots it. Damn, was that so satisfying. Fuck that thing. Darmanitan was next, so Ziggs is up for this one. A Surf then one-shots Darmanitan. Gigalith is then sent out, so Ziggs remains on the field. A Surf is enough to one-shot it, but Sturdy keeps it alive to Self Rock. A 4 Restore is then used, but another Surf takes it back down to 1 HP. One more Surf finishes the job. The final Pokemon is once again a Dugong. 3 back-to-back-to-back Charge Beams are enough for Ziggs to take it down, making quick work of Glacier's team. 3 down and again still no losses. And it wasn't just the legendaries doing all the work either, Ziggs had put in work. It was then time to get my revenge on the man who took me out of the last challenge, Drake. I ran into his room, I stared into his eyes and challenged him to one last battle, and so the battle commenced. He started out with Magmar that I was prepared for with Ziggs, who one-shot it with Surf. Raichu was then sent out next, a team member I hadn't seen yet. I didn't have a great answer to this, so when in doubt, throw the legendary out, so out came Sakura. They tanked a Thunderbolt and set up with a Swords Dance the next turn. Then the turn after, a Sacred Sword was enough to one-shot. And finally, it was once again time to face the Mew who caused me so much trouble before. I swapped out Sakura for Mob knowing Psychic wouldn't affect it, and that's exactly what happened. Mew used Metronome, which annoyingly was an Iron defense. It tanked the Crunch pretty well as a result. Another Metronome let it use Hydro Cannon, which took a huge chunk out of Mob, who landed another Crunch. Thanks to the Hydro Cannon, a recharge was needed for a free hit, but Crunch left it on 1 HP, meaning a full restore came next. Another Crunch did some decent damage. Metronome this time was Gastro Acid, which did nothing really, and another Crunch got Mew back in the yellow. So, on the next turn, it naturally locked into Synthesis and healed back up. Another Crunch got it back to half health. Next turn, Mew straight up used Ancient Power, which put Mob pretty low. Mob was then switched out for Nimbus, who I forgot was fighting when I did that, whilst another Full Restore was used on Mew. So I thought, screw it, if you want to do this, let's do this, and sent out my own Mew, Wisp. A Psychic hit for not much damage, and now it was time for the Metronome War. Wisp went first, using Searing Shot, which hilariously burnt the Mew, and because both of our abilities are synchronized, meant Wisp got burnt too. Great. The enemy Mew then used Metronome to hit Disarming Voice for a decent chunk of damage. I then decided to change my approach and use Dive. We both take a turn of burn damage, and Wisp then hits for barely anything. So that was useless. A Psychic from the enemy Mew hits very hard, and the burn damage nearly KOs Wisp, leaving it on 4 HP. It's time to switch out to Ori, who gets half health by a Psychic. This means another switch is needed. It's Ziggs' turn to tank, so also gets half health by a Psychic. I apparently decided to keep Ziggs in as a sacrifice, knowing Mew would fall to the burn the next turn. And accurately so, Ziggs falls to a Psychic. Mew, however, also falls to the burn. Raikou is out next, and boy am I glad I decided to take 2 legendaries in, because I knew some bullshit like this would happen. Luckily, this is a good matchup for Sakura, who takes turn 1 to set up a Swords Dance. Raikou uses Reflect, so Sakura goes for another Swords Dance. Her Spark does lackluster damage, so I know I can get away with another Swords Dance. That turn then repeats itself with another Swords Dance and then a Spark, which leads to a juiced up Sacred Sword, 1-hit KOing the Raikou. The last Pokemon is the Gyarados we already met earlier, so Sakura stays and uses Giga Drain, whilst also dodging a Hyper Beam. Another Giga Drain is used, so Gyarados then Dragon Dances. And not wanting to use the last of Giga Drain, Sakura then hits it with a juiced up Sacred Sword for the KO. All 4 Elite Four members down with only 1 loss. A sad loss though, as Ziggs has put in work for me. Finally, the time had arrived. Everything I'd worked for in the 60 hours I'd pumped into this save file was all leading to this. One battle stood between me and victory. All of the cursed gym battles, the random trainer sweeps, the magma battles, the rival battles, the failed wild encounters, and the losses. So many losses. Everything led me to this decisive battle. It was now or never if I wanted to complete my first ever Nuzlocke. The gates of justice open, and I slowly approached Steven. He wanted to know what kind of journey I'd been on to this point, and oh boy, it's been a journey. I had no plans to let him down, and with that, the final battle had started. It was time to fight the champion himself. He started off with a Cubone, perfect for Sakura. A singular Giga Drain was enough to one-shot it. He then proceeded to present me with a Greninja, my longest serving partner of the run. He knew this, but he was clearly testing me to truly push my emotions. Not falling for his mind games, I preserved, and Sakura hit with a Sacred Sword for the 1-hit KO. Lapras came next, and whilst risky, I kept Sakura out to do a huge chunk of the health with a Sacred Sword. Luckily, the Lapras used Hydro Pump, doing barely any damage. This allowed Sakura to hit another Sacred Sword, finishing off the Lapras. 3 down, 3 left to go. Steven finally decided to whip out the big guns and sent out a Registeel. I knew I needed more power to take it down, so Sakura used Swords Dance turn 1. Whilst dodging a Hammer Arm, another Swords Dance was used turn 2, whilst Registeel used Lock On. That meant it wouldn't miss again with what it did next, so I hit it with a Sacred Sword next turn, and it was enough to 1-hit KO the Registeel. Sakura was on a roll, but the next Pokemon was Kingdra, so Mob was tagged in. Kingdra used Dragon Dance on turn 1, then again on turn 2, and I'd seen where this had gone before. Steven was yet again using Mind Games with a traumatic event from the past. Mob used Drain and Kiss, but barely did anything. A third Dragon Dance was used and I was getting flashbacks. Our Crunch from Mob thankfully did more damage this time. Luckily it decided to use Dragon Pulse, which wasn't boosted by the Dragon Dances, and hit for quite a bit of damage. One more Crunch sent Kingdra into the red. This meant it was time for a full restore. Mob crunched again to start the cycle once more. Another Dragon Dance was getting me very worried for that physical attack coming. A Poison Jab then did quite a bit of damage. Another Dragon Pulse was taken by Mob, which meant one more Poison Jab finished off Kingdra. This was it. The very last Pokemon. Steven's final Pokemon was a Raichu, so I switched out for the revived Ori, who tanked a Thunderbolt for half his health. Another Thunderbolt sent Ori into the red, but an Earth Power chunked Raichu for a lot too. It was here I decided I knew how I wanted this one to end. The final attack on my fully randomized Nuzlocke was going to be the move that encapsulates the spirit of that better than anything else. It was perfect. I was going to end the run with Metronome. I sent out Wisp, selected Metronome, and let fate decide. I couldn't think of a better ending. RNG doing its thing one last time. Wisp took a Thunderbolt upon entry, and then another next turn. The last it could before being KO'd. So it was go big or go home. This was the one Metronome I was going to be able to hit. Was the RNG going to be in my favour? Well, Wisp used Metronome, and almost perfectly got gifted Revenge. Finally, on the last attack with the last row of RNG in the run, I was finally gifted my revenge against all of the previous bad luck the run had given me to get here. The crits, the confused rays, the arena traps, everything. And with one last shot, Wisp mustered up every single bit of that bad RNG and shoved it right back at Raichu. And thankfully, that was all I needed. Revenge was enough to take out the Raichu, and that was it. The run was over. I had officially beaten my first ever Nuzlocke. May arrived for one last time before I was taken into the room to add my heroes into the Hall of Fame, because she still thinks she's part of the team. She gets denied, and we head to the back to scan my team. These might be the 6 that get the recognition, but I want to take a moment to acknowledge the ones that didn't make it here. Bloom and Bugsy for that insane clutch at the Doofus Gym, Riley for making it so long with me, Nami for being my early game carry, Keanu for being an incredible help for the short time he was around, Guts for consistently being one of my hardest workers, Sage for being an insane late game pickup who instantly became one of my key team members, and especially Peach, who was undoubtedly the MVP of my entire run. I would have made it here without her. And then the end credits rolled, and I'm not gonna lie, as cringe as this might sound, I got really emotional at this part because I put so many hours into this. Not only was it a hardcore randomized Nuzlocke, but it was just my first full Nuzlocke in general, so it was really hard for a casual player like me, stressful beyond belief at times. There were times I was close to just quitting, but I didn't. I grinded for so many days and poured blood, sweat and tears into it, not knowing if at any point the run would end and my effort would be wasted because this wouldn't see the light of day. I feel like I learned so much about the in-depth Pokemon tactics I never bothered to care about before. So to see all the effort I put into this finally pay off 60 hours later, it hit hard. Even if nobody watches this or makes it to this point, I'm proud of myself for doing this. And for anyone who did make it here, genuinely, thank you so much for going on this short journey with me. It's been a ride. Let this be proof that us casual gamers can do great things when we try. And that's about it from me. I really wanted to push myself to make a video, and as stressful as it was, I've enjoyed it. So let me know if you want to see more things like this. I'd love to make videos on other games too, it doesn't just have to be Pokemon. It would also mean the world to me if you subscribed. You would literally be my favourite person in the world. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!